Hello, this is Wes from PC Gamer, and I'm joined by my colleague Austin Wood from Games Radar. How's it going, Austin?
It's going good.
We've got something pretty exciting to talk about today, which is we've played Elden Ring. Quite a bit of Elden Ring, given the fact that we only had early access to the network test for a weekend. So both of us kind of got as much time in with the game as we could, and I think we both have a lot of thoughts about Elden Ring.
Yeah, it was just a couple days, but there was a lot to see.
Yeah, so we had access to kind of this small little corner of the map. Honestly, I don't know. Did you get a sense for how much of the open world map we were actually able to run around in?
Yeah, because it was like a tiny section of Limgrave, which is one region, I guess like the starting region. And I kind of looked back over the footage from the latest gameplay trailer where they were showing off kind of the map scrolling around. And it genuinely seems like we were in maybe like 3 to 5% of the total map size.
God, yeah. So not much, and yeah, what we were able to play in was walled off, and I feel like you could probably spend, I don't know, 10 or 15 hours just going around in that area, not including the stuff that was walled off for us. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. And we've barely seen any of the bosses in the game, and yet we still fought like 10 bosses.
Yeah.
Did you actually count all the ones that you killed? Was it 10?
Yeah, so there were 10 in the world, and if you count like the guy with a big health bar in the tutorial area, that'd be 11.
Okay, yeah. So that guy was sort of a gimme tutorial fight, not so much
just a regular guy who got promoted.
Not an asylum demon situation there. But so I don't know, let's dive in. We've got a few different topics we want to go through here. Let's talk about the open world first. This is probably the most controversial design choice that they made with Elden Ring. What did you think? What was good about it? What was bad about it? What are your initial thoughts on this open world?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, technically, like a lot of Dark Souls is one big interconnected area, apart from like a few instanced teleport type stuff. But it didn't seem like as big of an open thing. It was just connected. Whereas this is, I guess, more visibly open. Like it's more sprawling, right? You can see stuff in the distance. You have literal like plains and cliffs and all these different levels of terrain you're running across, and I think it's like it makes a very good first impression because you just kind of step out of this cave of knowledge tutorial and you can see all these things. But it's like it works on me, right? Like I like that kind of exploration of just seeing a thing in the distance and wanting to go to it and find out what it is and getting distracted by another thing on the way there. Like I definitely kind of fell into that type of open world game flow as I was playing a lot, especially in the beginning. And then as I started to get more familiar with this little section of Limgrave, it almost became like when I would make new characters for the demo or for the network test, it'd be like a shopping list of like, okay, I know I need to go to this area to get this item. I know where this boss is, which is fun. It's fun to master like this little section of terrain. And I mean, getting that same level of familiarity for this enormous map they've shown off would take a lot of time and practice.
I like how you're like, oh yeah, that spell I need, that dragon spell is like on aisle 3 next to the Cheerios.
Yeah, like exactly.
I'm gonna bounce over, get some Mountain Dew. Yeah, I think for players who, if the way you typically play a game is the moment you're given a bit of freedom, you immediately try to go away from the direction the game seems to be pointing you towards, I think you'll enjoy the freedom of this open world a lot, because unless the final game has some sort of gatekeeping between regions other than just like enemies that will absolutely kick your ass, it seems like you're going to be able to roam very freely, very far, pretty much immediately upon starting the game. I'm interested to see if that holds up for the final game. But yeah, it seems extremely open, and that is pretty exciting. I think that's something that if I'm playing an open world game, I want that degree of freedom to go and just carve my own path rather than being sort of, checkpointed along from one spot to another, like I think the Assassin's Creed games, even though they do give you some freedom to explore, they also tend to kind of just hold your hand and like to say, go to the waypoint, and this is not that kind of game.
Yeah, like the only even like close approximation to that, and we've seen in Elden Ring, is like the first sort of site of grace checkpoint you rest at has a little guidance of grace, this little beam of light pointing vaguely in the direction of like a point of interest. And some, various sites of grace will have those, but those are like very minimal and also very optional. Like you can just ignore them and go wherever.
Yeah, and I definitely spent a lot of time free roaming before even kind of realizing. I guess I knew vaguely where I was supposed to go, but I was just like, I'm gonna just see what I can get up to out here. Mm-hmm. And I did enjoy the structure of finding little hidden dungeons around the world. It almost felt a bit like the original, Legend of Zelda, going all the way back to the NES. Mm-hmm. That feeling of just kind of stumbling upon something in that way, and then being, ooh, what's the treasure in here? But I was kind of disappointed that almost every dungeon we found, at least in this opening area, is very simple. Like there's not much going on with them, right?
Yeah, like for me it felt like, if people have played Bloodborne, it felt like the very earliest Chalice dungeons in that game, where it's basically like a hallway with a trap and like a treasure chest at the end, and that's kind of it. Like you kill a couple dudes, you pull like one lever which opens the boss room or something like that. Like the actual dungeoneering part of a lot of these things like actually just took a couple of minutes, and then it was like one boss fight. There were some of them were a little better. I thought the mine area like north of the swamp was fun. That had a lot more kind of layers to it. There was a lot more enemy variety, it felt like. But yeah, there's definitely
that was definitely the best one.
Yeah, just like there's a lot of caves with dudes in it that are really small.
And one of the disappointing things about it for me is I didn't feel like most of those little caves had a lot going on narratively, and not like I was expecting to run into a character who then is like telling me a story, but like kind of in the classic, Dark Souls sense of like they pack a lot of little detail often into just what items do you find in a place, and the set dressing of a dungeon and stuff. Yeah. And I felt like most of them felt pretty generic. But the one you mentioned, the mine, you go in and like there's all these guys like mining for minerals, and then at the end of it you fight this troll boss who lives in his like treasure room. He's just got like gold piled up all over the place. So that was really cool, and I hope there are more dungeons that feel like that, spread throughout the game world. Maybe outside this opening area they tend to be a little more detailed like that, but it did kind of make me worried that there's not going to be, just because of the sheer volume of these things that I guess they're putting in the game, that most of them are going to be pretty light touch.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely just feel a lot of the time less like actual dungeons or even like sort of old catacombs or things like that, and just like literally a cave. And some of them have, like more exciting things at their end. Like one of them leads like underwater, and you pop up on this island. And then I remember there's like one little underground passage guarded by this giant plant, and then inside is a weird boss, and past them is this weird and like eccentric NPC. So there's there's a little spice like to them here and there, but the layout of them, like the actual exploring part, is like you could just put your hand on the right wall and walk forward for 10 minutes and you'll kind of clear out the whole thing.
I think one thing that as I was reflecting on the open world, I really wasn't enjoying just the act of exploration in this game too much after I made a few of those discoveries of the little dungeons and stuff. And it is very much a Souls game. There are little things that are extremely easy to miss, that are exciting to find. But I think one of the issues for me is if I'm looking at this and saying, okay, I have this big open world to explore, what am I getting out of it versus the more compact level design of a typical Souls game. And I feel like I want an open world to have some degree of interactivity that you couldn't necessarily get with a smaller world. And there's really not a lot to do in Elden Ring to interact with the environment other than killing enemies, which is obviously what we expected to be doing most of the time, but then like picking up, berries off the ground and stuff like that. You don't get a lot of like, there's no puzzles. At least that I recalled running into in the open world. There's no, way to chop down trees or move objects really in the world. You can't really affect the environment at all. You can only affect the enemies within it. And I don't know, do you think that's gonna is it gonna start to feel kind of, sterile after exploring like the other 97% of the map or whatever we have left remaining for us?
I mean, I think one thing that I'm kind of holding out for, which I don't think would have been present in this like very limited network test area, is sort of seeing how different parts of the world connect and overlap. Like we've just kind of been stuck in this little walled garden right now, but even in there we have like those well springs you can jump on with your mount, which kind of take you to different levels of terrain. It's a big dramatic leap. I like to see like discovering one of those that leads back to a familiar area, or maybe like some big cutscene where you drop a drawbridge which lets you access this next continent or island or something. Those are just all examples of things that I'd very much like to see, and I think we could see based on some of the map features they've shown in trailers. But I mean, to some extent I do agree that right now it is pretty much just like this buffet of stuff to do, but it's very open and kind of the points of interest are very divided. But there are little discoveries to make along the way. Like I played a couple different characters for this network test, and on my second character, after about 6.5 hours on the first character, my second character, I only just found this like ancient golem mini boss in the middle of a field. He just like pops out of the ground when you get close, and I totally missed him before.
Yeah, I just also found him by complete chance on my. I guess it was probably still my first character, but I had definitely gone through most of that area before and just hadn't wandered into the exact right spot to trigger him and make him pop up. So that was exciting.
Yeah, I feel like sort of the lack of more environmental interaction is probably partly a function of how spread out and how sprawling the world is now. Because like I'm thinking about some of the more like condensed and claustrophobic environments in Dark Souls where like 1, 2, and 3, where you sort of have a limited view of what's in front of you, and there's a lot of stuff packed into that. Whereas now, because you're sort of just your perspective is so wide when you're out in this third-person camera in this big open world, like I think naturally, just as a function of the genre and of the setting and everything, things are going to have to be a little bit more spread out. And I guess the only kind of saving grace there for people who might find that it's too big is that once you get your mount, which you do pretty quickly, it like effectively shrinks the world in terms of how long it takes to get to places. So that's like
you are very speedy.
Yeah, like you can get around and get to the things you see pretty quickly. And I'm definitely the type of player who like in our network test, we had those fog walls, which are there just to keep you in this limited area. They won't be there in the full game. And every time I would run into one of those, it was like super, like a big, let down, like heart sink moment, because I wanted to keep going and see what's over there and what's over there. And
absolutely, I agree with you. And I was initially pretty down on the open world, but I've been trying to think about how is the experience we had in this very small walled off portion of the network test going to feel compared to the full game, right?
Right.
And my hope, and this is like, it's a very nebulous thing to pin down, but my hope is that I found exploring the open world unsatisfying, but I think maybe part of what is going to make it, or at least part of what could make it worthwhile compared to the more contained, tight design of the Dark Souls games, is just the scale of it.
Right.
And we can kind of see a glimpse of the scale of it in the network test, but I think there's a big difference between being like, oh, I can go to that hill over there and see if there's something new in that part of the world, and like, yeah, it's kind of boring that there wasn't really much going on in the grass in between those two places.
Right.
But I think it could be a very different experience to be standing on one part of this map and know that there's a huge world to traverse, and like you're going to run into so many things along the way. You're going to end in a totally different environment where, the weather is different or the enemies are totally different. And I think maybe that feeling of like going on a real journey, as opposed to like I hopped on my horse and I ran the 2 minutes it takes to get from one side of the network test area to the other, like that doesn't deliver that scale that they're going for. So maybe in the final game, the open world has kind of more, grandiosity to it that makes it feel worth it.
Yeah, it's very hard to evaluate it in a vacuum. What's funny is after putting like a dozen or 14 hours or so into this very limited network test, it started to feel like one level that I kind of started to know like the back of my hand because we were just always retracing it. I think like the kind of moment you're describing that I think we just can't get yet is like, what I'm looking forward to is, like being 20 hours or whatever into the full game and being at some castle or fortress or whatever in some other continent we don't start in, very far from Limgrave, and kind of looking back over this sweeping area and seeing like Limgrave in the distance, right? Like, oh, this is how far we've come. Like we're all the way over here, and it's a very different environment. And obviously we'll have done and killed and fought a lot of stuff in that time. And I think if we can get that sort of experience, that'll help kind of sell the impact and the worth of the map and the scale of it, which we just again we can't really get right now.
What would you say were a couple of your favorite things in the network test of Elden Ring? What you played so far?
Yeah, I mean, after playing a couple different characters with a few builds, like I'm just super excited by how effective all these different play styles and builds seem to be. I think there's going to be a ton of variety and replayability. Like I can't wait to do different things, and I'll be interested to see if we have like a reset your stats kind of function like we have in the past couple of games.
Yeah,
I think that would go a long way. Like one thing that's definitely jumped out about just the whole experience is how, in general, I think because of all these things we have at our disposal, Elden Ring will be on the easier side of like FromSoftware stable of games. Mm-hmm. But there are so many encounters and individual enemies that are just like the biggest middle finger like they could have possibly made. Like there's just some just absurd stuff that I can't imagine being in any other game from any other studio. Like the highlight for me, I have a clip of this somewhere, is just like my first encounter in Stormvale Castle. There's these eagles, these giant attack eagles that just have giant swords for feet, and they just dive bomb you out of nowhere. Like they don't have swords like mounted on their feet. They have swords for feet, and they just like fly out of nowhere and shred you to pieces. And it's just like, who thought of this? Someone had to sit down and think of this and put it in a video game.
Yeah, there are some enemies in there that are kind of generic feeling. Some literally, I think, ripped from previous Souls games. Like I found a rat, and I was like, I know this rat. I've seen this guy before.
This rat model, yeah.
But then you also have enemies that are just like, fucked up in that way that only FromSoftware characters and creations are. There were there's these like ruins kind of out in the swamp that I was exploring, and there's like some skeleton guys, like woohoo undead, nothing new there. And then there were these like shaggy dogs. Did you run into the shaggy dogs that are just super aggro?
Yeah, they're a nightmare to deal with.
Swarm on you and leap at you, and yeah, they had like undead dogs in Dark Souls 1, but there's something about these things just being this like mass of fur that makes them look initially kind of way more friendly, and then
they're like actually kind of cute
and
when you first see them.
They are not when they murder you.
Yeah. And like dogs have always been a nightmare to fight in FromSoftware games, I feel, which I love. There's a point, it's just like this very open field, and out of nowhere you ride along, and literally a pack of wolves will fall out of the sky around you.
Oh yeah, howling.
Like, there's no explanation given. It just happens because it's a FromSoftware game.
Yeah, there's definitely some good surprises out there in the world. Some pretty fun stuff. I think the enemy design is on point and will not disappoint over the course of this game, I don't think.
Yeah, enemies and bosses have been great so far. Like I still say that no one does bosses quite like FromSoftware. They're just so like well animated, so weighty, so heavy, and like they're just so imposing. Especially some of the later ones in this network test. Like I think the sort of he's positioned as the final boss is at that castle, and he just has incredible range and a huge variety of cool attacks. It's just a super fun fight.
Yeah. I think a positive for me was you and I played like a couple hours of co-op together, and not that I expected it to be an issue in this game, because I've done a lot of co-op in the Souls games in the past, but it did feel really seamless. It was like it was easy to get a summon in. We used the password system. It worked like a charm. I think they adapted it well to the open world in that you didn't really we weren't tethered to each other. We could kind of each roam as far as we wanted. We didn't run into anything stopping that. We couldn't ride the horse, so maybe that's kind of the way that they're like, all right, we're probably going to make sure you're not on opposite ends of the map, because it would just take you forever to do that. But
right. I think the only limitation we really ran into was if we were out, if you summoned me out in the open world, or I summoned you, and we found a dungeon together, we couldn't enter that dungeon together. One of us would have to split off, make our way back to that dungeon, and then get resummoned from inside that dungeon. Right? We couldn't. There was a kind of a fog wall,
and that was kind of a shame. But I think that makes sense given the way they're trying to make some changes to summoning in the game, and make those little dungeons a place where you can just easily summon somebody. So I think it made sense that they were kind of separate from the full world.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably a technical reason of how we have to distinguish the summoning pools for specific areas.
Yeah, but I think what did work pretty well with that is they've sort of loosened the restrictions on when you're allowed to summon somebody. So in the old games, it's okay, you're in Undeadburg, you can summon people until you've defeated the boss of Undeadburg, and then that's it. You can't summon there anymore. And obviously with the open world, they had to change that, right? So the open world now, you're going to be able to just summon somebody whenever you want. And I think the really cool thing about that is with the piecemeal design of these little dungeons, summoning somebody, either a random person or a friend in the open world, I think there are going to be a lot of really great moments where you summon somebody, and if it's your friend, they're like, oh, did you get this suit of armor? And you're like, no. And they're like, well, let me show you where to get it. And you just go do that, and then they despawn. Or with a random person, you summon them, and maybe they just start taking off in one direction of the map, and you're just like, all right, they're gonna show me something. I don't know where they're going, but we'll find out.
One thing I really hope we see, because there's the password system, there's a hard password and then a group password. And if you have the same group password, it makes the messages and summon signs from people with the same password more visible. In your world, you're more likely to see them. I really hope to see among the community sort of these soft guild systems where if you put this password in, you'll see all these tips and sort of almost like Sherpas out in the world ready to help people who are just actively trying to join other people's worlds to show them things and to carry them through bosses or whatever.
Yeah, that could be really cool. Fashion police clan.
Yeah, basically, just again.
I'd say one of the we're gonna go through some things we didn't like as well to close off. One thing I didn't like, but I think with the heavy asterisk that it just didn't seem to be doing anything in the network test, or there weren't enough people playing, is you used the words summoning pool earlier, and that is definitely a new mechanic in this game, where you have your traditional summons where you put down your sign and you summon an individual player, but then there's also this summoning pool system where you can send your sign to a summoning pool, and it's kind of unclear what you're doing exactly, or where that pool is, but I think it's if you're standing in a dungeon or near a summoning shrine, which will be placed in the dungeon, or I think around the open world as well. I think you're basically blasting out to the ether hey, if anybody wants to summon me, they can pull me from this list rather than having to click my name on the ground.
Yeah, it's definitely not something I totally understand yet. Both because pretty much all my multiplayer time was done with you, but also I think because when you get to a dungeon or some new areas, there's that little multiplayer statue. You just kind of hit triangle or hit use, and it's oh, the summoning area is active now. Yeah. But I'm also not clear on what both the usage of that and also the benefit over traditional put down a sign and summon someone. Yeah. And I'm kind of thinking of it as if you remember the SOS missions in Monster Hunter World, where you could just put out a blanket call of I need help, and you could also just be okay, I'm available to do whatever. It was an online status. Maybe it's like that. I don't know.
Or a version of a looking for group kind of thing, or
Yeah.
like an MMO, slotting people in for raids or something. It seems like it's that kind of system. I tried to use it for like probably an hour over the course of the weekend. Just like at different times, I would just be like, yeah, I'll send my sign to the summoning pool, and like nothing ever happened. I never got summoned, and I never saw anyone's summon sign. So the only time I was ever able to get summoned for co-op, other than when you and I coordinated it, is I put my sign down in front of the kind of main boss of the network test area, Margit the Fell, and I put my sign down outside him, and one person summoned me, and then that was it. I tried quite a few other times and never got summoned. So I bet the summoning pool system is gonna work well and be a good idea, but it just didn't seem like there were enough people using it in our very limited like press preview, or it just wasn't working right. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I think the worst case scenario, if you're the kind of person who like has like a close friend or a group of friends who kind of want to go through Elden Ring as co-op as possible, like you can't do a true co-op campaign, but you can group up pretty regularly and pretty easily. Like you'll probably just keep using the regular summon sign, so it's like worst case scenario, the summoning pool thing, whatever it is, however it works, it just won't bother you, right? Like the worst case, it just does nothing.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's replacing the old system. It's kind of just an augment for the new open world design. So
yeah, it feels like if anything, it might end up being like a more passive element of multiplayer where you can just kind of opt in, whereas summoning sign, you're very clearly like, okay, I want this person to find me with this password, or like I'm putting down invasion signs because I'm looking for a PvP duel or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, one other thing that was kind of a negative for me, I feel like the like combat feel of Souls games has come so far from the first Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2, especially thinking about Bloodborne and Sekiro. I feel like this game, going back to the same kind of button configuration for switching from a one-hand to two-handing a weapon, and they added in an extra button press you have to do for it because there's a jump button now. I feel like that feels kind of clunky, especially because you have to use two-handing on like a sword, for example, to use your weapon art, right? If you want to also have a shield.
Yeah, I had like it kind of varied for me. I think if you want to use it with a shield on, you have to, because the other option, you have to two-hand, because the other option is to have a catalyst or like a tool for spell casting in your left hand, and then that seems to be able to proc the active skill of the weapon in your right hand. It was definitely the kind of thing where I would decide before starting a fight or an encounter or whatever, like, okay, what do I need set up here, because it is kind of fiddly to get adjusted like in the middle of combat. I definitely don't want to be like swapping between one-handed, two-handed, shield, catalyst, and all these different skills, especially in the future. I think we'll be using two main hand weapons, or like dual wielding or something. Like there's definitely a lot of kind of setup that isn't quite as fast or fluid as it was before, where you would just tap, I think, triangle to two-hand and whatever. But like I do think the complexity and the fun and the variety of the weapon skills is worth it, but for moment-to-moment gameplay, I think the flow of it does suffer a little bit.
You might be right that it's just once you get used to it, it becomes more of a planning thing than an input obstacle. I think it's interesting that you can use a catalyst in your left hand, and I guess the catalysts don't get weapon ashes applied to them. Do you remember if that's the case?
It's weird. Like the ashes that I had, I think maybe around 9 or 10 or so, a couple of like melee ones, dex scaling ones, a lightning one, a couple of magic ones, and in sort of this menu, it's like each weapon has a select number of ashes available to it. Like you can't use every ash on every weapon. Right.
They're based on like types, like thrusting weapons, for example. Yeah.
But like there was a tab in that menu for catalysts and things like that. I just didn't have any ashes, maybe that are available for them. So maybe in the future we'll find something that'll help with that, in terms of like we can have a shield with like an ash that lets us, instead of parrying, we can use our weapon skill while we have our shield up or something.
Yeah, so still some things to learn about that system. I think they're definitely designing it to make you want to use those weapon arts probably more than you did in Dark Souls 3, or at least I don't remember using the weapon arts too often in Dark Souls 3. So there's definitely some roadblocks there, but that's probably more of a learning curve thing than than anything else.
Yeah, I think it'll just kind of come with build crafting, because in Dark Souls 3, you just, your weapon had a skill. You could use it if you wanted to. It was part of its moveset. But now, because you can mix and match, you can kind of like fill in, like, okay, I have this weapon, but it doesn't have much range, so I want this like kind of, we've seen in the trailer this like whirlwind spell, which looks like it's like tied to a sword instead of magic. Like things like that might help you cover different spaces and things like that. I think it will hopefully just become a planning thing where you get comfortable with this loadout, and if I have this weapon in this hand and this utility item in my other hand, I know what is available to me at any given moment.
Well, let's wrap this up. Do you have any other closing thoughts, favorite or least favorite things from what you've played so far?
One thing I still have not been able to get out of my head is the very first character you meet in this game is right outside the Cave of Knowledge, this tutorial. You've been playing the game for anywhere from 10 seconds to 10 minutes at this point. And the first person you meet, and his first line of dialogue tells you to go find a ditch to die in. And it just felt like such a FromSoftware introduction to this beautiful world we've been prepared.
I actually went back to talk to him after killing. He basically is like, "Oh yeah, you can go up to that castle and get wrecked if you want, like an idiot." And so after I beat the boss of the network test, Margit the Fell, I went back to talk to him because I was hoping he was going to be impressed, and he did not have any new dialogue. But Margit was not the boss of the entire castle. He was the boss of the front door of the castle, basically. So I bet there's some more dialogue for that guy. At some point, we can probably impress him by not being dead in a ditch somewhere. But
I would say of all the beginner area crestfallen soldier type characters, which were in a lot of games, going back to Demon Souls and Dark Souls, I think this guy is my favorite because he's such an asshole.
He'll probably turn out to be, the mastermind behind the whole whatever
he broke
terrible
the Elden Ring
thing has fallen upon this world. Yeah, it's all on this guy.
But I mean, other than that, I think the best description of this is if this build that we played had been kind of leaked like years ago before Elden Ring was announced, I would have assumed it was Dark Souls 4 because it looks and feels very familiar. It's the kind of games that I love to see FromSoftware put out, but there is a lot of new stuff here. I think a lot of things have been improved for the open world structure and have been improved by it, which is really exciting, and I can't wait to see how that unfolds throughout the course of what looks to be a very, very big game that we've just kind of gotten started with. I'm super hungry to go past those fog walls that were there just to kind of corral us into the network test. I want to see the rest of the castle we were in past Marquis, and there's just immediate wanderlust, and I just want to see more. I want to find new things, meet more characters. If that's kind of the point of this appetizer that we've gotten with the network test, it's definitely worked for me.
Yeah, my big hope for it is that the what FromSoftware calls the legacy dungeons, which are the areas like Stormville Castle, I hope that there are enough of those that they feel like substantial kind of classical Souls areas with tons of nooks and crannies and overlapping hallways to explore and things that are easy to miss. And I hope there's enough of that in the game that it feels like you're still getting a good amount of that classic experience married to this more free roam open world. And if they manage to do enough of both of those things, man, this game is going to be enormous and incredibly replayable.
Yeah, first impressions, it feels like the game that a lot of people were hoping for, having watched it from trailers for so long. And I also hope that with all these new RPG elements and sort of the open world appeal, that people who have either missed or just intentionally avoided all this FromSoftware hype for the past decade or so, I hope that some of those people can find something they like here and kind of get into the series through that.
Yeah, it does feel like the FromSoftware game that if you bounced off some particular aspect of their prior games, this could be the one that hooks you because you have so much more freedom in how you approach it. And it's so much more player empowering, I think, than those previous games were. So I think there's probably going to be a little something for everybody in here, unless you really love your narrative-based quests. In which case, there's not going to be much of that. There's not too many people to talk to. Nobody's telling you who to go save because everybody's dead or undead or just generally bummed out.
Yeah,
And that's Elden Ring. So
basically that's what it's been so far.
the full game is out at the end of February, and I don't know. Hopefully, we get a chance to play some more of it before then. We don't know if they're going to do more than one network test or just the one, but
Yeah.
we'll see. February's not too far away.
Yeah, and I think everyone, like everyone who's got an invite, will be open to play like in the next couple of days. Like it's like the 12th through the 15th or something. They've got the exact times up on their Twitter.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's going to be a ton more about Elden Ring on Games Radar and PC Gamer. Austin, thanks for taking like a long time to talk about Elden Ring. I feel like we, on the one hand, barely scratched the surface, but on the other hand, we did talk about a whole bunch of stuff here. So that was fun.
Yeah,
and
it was a fun conversation. I think it's a good sign that there is already this much to talk about from just this one kind of first bite.
It's exciting to finally be able to talk about Elden Ring in more than just, analyzing the trailer or whatever.
Yeah, it's a video game. It is officially a video game.
Officially. All right. That's going to do it for us. Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thanks everyone.